Ground Zero, Chapter 5. Brandon. Trapped. The elevator kept sliding down, and not in the way it was built to. Brandon could feel how wrong it was in the pit of his stomach. From the horrified looks on their faces, the other passengers in the elevator felt it too. "Hit the emergency stop button," the blonde woman said. Nobody moved. The elevator kept sliding. Above them, something groaned sickeningly. "Hit the emergency stop," the woman cried, and there was a loud chung above them, and the floor of the car stopped like a stone. Brandon's heart jumped into his throat, and he lunged for the control panel and slapped the red stop button. The elevator's emergency brakes grabbed hold with a squeal, and the car jolted to a stop. Everyone tumbled to the ground, and then they were still. Brandon's breath came fast and hard as he panted with fear. What had just happened? Something smelled like it was burning, but it was not like the kitchen fire. It had a chemical tinge to it, like when you squirted lighter fluid on the burning charcoal in a grill. The passengers stirred and helped each other to their feet. Brandon's legs were trembling so much he almost couldn't stand. "What the heck just happened?" the big man in the blue blazer asked. None of them had an answer. "I rode out Hurricane Bell in this tower in '76, said Shavinda, the windows on the World Worker. During the hurricane, the tower swayed back and forth 5 yards each way, but it was nothing like that. The silver-haired man clutched at the buttons on his shirt. "Good God, if this thing fell over, it'd reach all the way to Chinatown." Brandon blanched. "The Twin Towers fall over?" "That's not helping," the woman said. "Try the phone." There was an emergency phone behind a metal panel, and Shavinder pressed the call button and waited. "Yes? Hello?" he said after a moment, and Brandon relaxed. If someone knew they were in the elevator, they could just come rescue them. "Yes, something happened. We're stuck in an elevator around the 85th floor. Brandon heard a calm voice on the other end answering back. "He says there is some kind of problem on the 91st floor, Shavinder told the other passengers. "An explosion or something. He says, 'Hello? Hello? Are you there?'" "He's gone." An explosion, Brandon thought. What could have exploded? The big man took the phone from Shavinder and pressed the call button again, and he shook his head. "The line's dead." Black smoke crept through the seams at the top of the elevator, and Brandon felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. Smoke? Was there a fire? "It's getting really hot, too." "We've got to get out of here," the silver-haired man cried. "Stay cool," the woman told him. She dug a cell phone out of her briefcase and flipped it open, but she couldn't get a signal. Nobody else had a cell phone to try. They were trapped and cut off from the rest of the world. Brandon put his head in his hands and tried not to cry. He was scared and separated from the person he relied on the most, his dad. "It's you and me against the world, Brandon. This is how we survive." But how was Brandon supposed to survive without him? Smoke tickled the back of Brandon's throat, and he coughed. The old man coughed too, longer and harder. Brandon could now see the black smoke among them, curling and twisting like something alive. The big man pulled cloth napkins from the wreckage of the cart. "Here, wrap these around your faces," he said. "Dab them in some fresh water first," Shavinder said. The overturned pitcher had a little water left in it, and he wet the napkins and handed them out. Brandon tied his napkin around his mouth and took a deep breath. It was still hard to breathe, but the napkin filtered out a lot of the smoke. The old man kept coughing, though, even with the damp napkin to help. They all sat down on the floor to get as far away from the smoke as they could and went around introducing themselves. The blonde woman's name was Marnie, and she was a stockbroker from Connecticut. Shavinder was born in New Delhi, India, and lived in Queens. He had worked at Windows on the World since it opened in 1976. The old man's name was Stefan. He was an investment banker who worked on the 101st floor and lived in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He'd been a New Yorker all his life. The big man's name was Mike, and he lived in New Jersey. He was in the tower to interview for an insurance job. "I'm Brandon," Brandon said when it was his turn. It was weird talking to a bunch of grown-ups like he was one of them, but in a way he was. It didn't matter whether they were young or old or where they came from. They were all stuck in the same bad situation together. "Wait, you're Leo Chavez's kid, aren't you?" Shavinder said. Brandon nodded. There was no sense in hiding it now. Getting in trouble with his father was the least of his worries. "What'd you think that sound was?" Mike asked. "That snapping sound right before the kid hit the stop button? You think that was some elevator cable?" Nobody answered him. So far, no one seemed to be outright panicking, but Brandon realized that he was shaking and couldn't make himself stop. He wished he could reach his dad. If only I hadn't gone off on my own, Brandon thought, and all for some stupid Wolverine gloves. What a fool he'd been, and now he was going to choke to death inside this metal coffin. "Kid, you with us?" It was Mike. He and the others were looking at Brandon like they'd ask him something when he wasn't listening. "We're going to try to get out of here," Mike told him. "Can I lift you up so you can try the ceiling?" Brandon agreed, and Mike boosted him up onto his shoulders. The smoke was heavier up there, and Brandon held his breath. He pushed and pounded on every inch of the ceiling, but nothing budged. "Let's see if we can get the doors open instead," Shavinder said. He and Mike put their palms flat on the shiny metal doors of the elevator and pulled, and the doors opened a crack. Brandon felt a tiny thrill. Maybe they were going to get out of here after all. He and Marnie jumped in to help. Together, all four of them pulled the elevator doors wide, and Shavinder jammed a metal serving tray between the doors to keep them open. Brandon stepped back, expecting to see a hallway, or at least part of one. Instead, there was nothing but an unpainted gray wall with the number 85 handwritten on it in pencil. They were at the 85th floor, but they couldn't exit onto it. Of course, Brandon realized, the local becomes an express after the 97th floor. There were no exits from this elevator until the sky lobby far below them on the 78th floor, which meant they really were trapped, and the smoke and heat was getting worse. It's drywall, Mike said. Sheetrock, the stuff they make walls out of. Maybe we can bust our way out of here, said Marnie. Mike lifted a big foot and kicked the wall. Thwack! Brandon leaned in close to look. All the kick had done was leave a footprint. Mike waved everybody back, lowered his shoulders, and ran full tilt at the wall. Thunk! Nothing had happened to the wall, but the elevator shuddered and jerked down another half a foot. Brandon thought he was going to have a heart attack. Let's not do that again, Stephen said. Well, excuse me for trying to save our lives, Mike snapped. Everybody started yelling at each other, and Stephen started coughing again and couldn't stop. The smoke was getting worse, and now the elevator felt like a sauna. Brandon plucked a butter knife out of the wreckage from the serving cart and held it up triumphantly. What about this? He cried. Everybody stopped arguing and stared. Yeah, that's a good idea. That could work, Mike said, and Brandon felt a small flush of pride. Mike took the knife and hacked at the sheetrock. A tiny bit of drywall crumbled into dust and rained down on the carpet, leaving a divot in the wall. There we go, Mike said. He pulled off his blazer and loosened his tie and went back to hacking on the wall. Shavinder grabbed a spatula-like serving utensil from the floor, and he used that on the hole too, taking turns with Mike. When they got tired, Marnie and Brandon took turns. It was exhausting work. They didn't ask Stephen to help, though, and he didn't offer. He was having enough trouble breathing already. Smoke streamed in through every crack and every seam now, and something up above them popped and groaned. Stephen tried the elevator phone again, but there was no answer. What was going on? Where was everybody? We're all going to die here, Stephen wheezed. We're not going to die, Marnie said, but it didn't sound like she believed it. Brandon's arm shook, and he could barely aim straight when he whacked at the hole. How could he be trapped without his dad? Just this morning they had been together on another elevator. Why hadn't this happened then, when they could have helped each other? Mike and Shavinder took over, steadily chipping away at the wall. There wasn't one layer of drywall, they discovered. There were 3. But working together, the elevator passengers managed to carve, yank, and kick a pizza-sized hole in the wall. None of them could fit through it, except for Brandon. Go, young man, go, Shavinder told him. But we don't even know where it leads, said Brandon. The space beyond the hole was dark and empty. Who cares, as long as it's not in here, said Marnie. Brandon couldn't argue with that. He took a deep breath of wet, smoky air, and with Mike and Shavinder's help, he climbed up and out and into the unknown. Chapter 6. Rashmina. Peshawali. Rashmina stared at her brother in horror. He knew that the Taliban planned to attack. Did the other people in the village know? Passoon and the ANA are Afghans, our own people, and I have no more love for the Americans than you do, she went on before her brother could speak. But this betrayal will only make things work for our village. The Americans will blame us for the attack. The Afghan soldiers made their choice when they agreed to do the Americans' dirty work for them, Passoon said. Besides, it's not like we're the ones carrying out the attack. No, we're just the ones not telling anyone about it, Rashmina said. And if you won't, I will. No, you can't, Passoon said. He grabbed her again, but Rashmina was too quick. She broke free and ran up the steps. Passoon was close on her heels. Pop, pop, kapoom, kapoom. The familiar sound of gunfires and explosions made Rashmina duck and pull up short, her heart racing. It's already started, Passoon cried. Rashmina heard shouting and saw ANA soldiers scrambling down the steps for cover. Passoon grabbed Rashmina's hand and pulled her back toward their house. Run, Rashmina! Rashmina raced back down the stairs into her home, where her family was gathering in the front room. Baba wasn't there, and Rashmina realized Passoon hadn't come inside with her. Thoom! The ground rocked from a nearby explosion, and dirt rained down from the ceiling. It's safer in the back, Anna said, leading them into the women's room. More disappeared into the kitchen. Pack, pack, pack. Gunfire erupted close enough nearby to rattle the dishes, and Rashmina and Marzia huddled together against the wall. Anna pulled Zahir into her lap to sing to him, but the shooting and explosions didn't seem to bother the baby. He was already used to it. Rashmina didn't know if she would ever stop flinching at the sounds. The earth shook again, and Marzia squeezed Rashmina's arms. Dear God, please keep Baba and Passoon safe out there, Rashmina prayed. And Miriam, she added, remembering the translator. Even as the fighting continued outside, Rashmina found herself wondering what it would be like to go to Kabul someday and study to become a translator. She might be able to work for the Americans like Miriam did. That had to pay well and would be worth more to her parents than bartering her off as a bride. Rashmina could put her English skills to work and support her entire family. It was an almost impossible dream, but if Miriam could do it, so could Rashmina. Without a dream, without ambition, what point was there to living? Rifles and rockets boomed outside. Rashmina slid away from Marzia and pulled her English notebook from between the sleeping mats stacked in the corner. If becoming a translator was her way out, she wouldn't waste a second when she could be studying. Rashmina's mother came into the room carrying a broom. "Oh no, none of that now," she said, spying Rashmina's notebook. She snatched away and put the broom in Rashmina's hands. "You focus on your housework, not your schoolwork. And you get back to sorting that rice," she told Marzia. "Keep your heads down and learn how to be good wives. That's how women survive." Moore left the kitchen again, and Rashmina threw the broom down in frustration. "Forgive your mother, Mina-Jean," her grandmother told her. Zahir had fallen asleep in her lap, and Anna took up her needlework again while Marzia returned to the rice. "Why?" Rashmina asked. "All she wants from me is to learn how to be a good wife and marry a successful man. She has no dreams in her heart, no hope for something more." "You must understand, Mina-Jean," Anna said. "Your mother has never been allowed to dream. Me, I was born in Kabul long before the Americans came, or the Taliban, before the Soviet invasion even. It was a golden time in Afghanistan." Anna continued dreamily. "Women went to school and got jobs. One of my sisters became the principal of a school. Another woman I knew became a poet. We dressed differently, too, like they do in Europe and America. I once wore a skirt that didn't even reach my knees. They called it a mini-skirt." "Outside?" Rashmina asked. She shared an astonished look with Marzia. Rashmina couldn't imagine wearing such thing in the house, let alone out. "Oh yes," the Anna said, laughing. "The boys rather liked it, and I did too." Marzia blushed, and Rashmina got up and started sweeping. The sounds of fighting still filtered in from outside. Some women wore the chador, but only if they wanted to, Anna told them. A chador was a robe that covered a woman from head to toe with only her face visible. We were all Muslims, but in those days no one tried to force their beliefs on anyone else. There was real tolerance of others. We were brothers and sisters working towards a better future, a better Afghanistan. Her face fell. "Then, 40 years ago, the Russians invaded and I fled to the mountains with your grandfather. God shower blessings on his grave." Anna closed her eyes. "Afghanistan has known nothing but war ever since. That is the world your mother was born into." "But so are we," Rashmina said, glancing at Marzia and Zahar. As if to prove it, there came a thump-thump-thump of an American helicopter and an even louder boom that made Rashmina flinch. Anna shook her head. "When your mother was 6, her father was killed by a missile while he was praying in his backyard," she said softly. "When she was your age, her older brother was killed by the Taliban for no reason that has ever been explained to her. Her husband, your father, my son, had his leg mangled by an old Soviet mine right after they were married. 2 of her children died before they reached their 5th birthday, and her oldest daughter, your sister Hila, was killed by an American bomb." Anna closed her eyes again and sighed. She wore her sadness like a chadar. Rashmina swallowed. She knew about her sister and her father, of course, but her mother had never spoken about the rest. "Is it any wonder your mother wishes only for you to be a good wife and married to a good husband?" Anna asked Rashmina. "She has never known a better Afghanistan as I have, and cannot trust in the promise of a brighter Afghanistan as you do. She expects your life will be just as hard as hers, and would protect you from anything so dangerous and painful as hope." Rashmina suddenly felt sorry for her mother, not only because of all the awful things she had lived through, but because she had never had anybody in her youth like Anna or Rashmina's teacher or even Miriam to show her things could be better. "When you're done sweeping, you can get back to gathering firewood, which you still haven't finished," Rashmina's mother said, making her jump. Moore had come back into the room while Rashmina was lost in thought. "They're done with their shooting," Moore said, "for now." Rashmina realized her mother was right. There was no more shots or explosions. The battle was over. "Yes, Moore," Rashmina said meekly. "I will try to be nicer to my mother in the future," she thought, "but I will not give up on my dreams." When Moore was gone, Rashmina picked up her English notebook and tucked it under her tunic before ducking out the back door to go collect firewood. As she made her way around the mountain, she read her English lessons aloud. Pawasha uses her computer to write an email. She talks to her friends on Facebook. Rashmina had never used a computer, but she knew what one looked like. Some of the older girls at school practiced for when they would finally get a computer by tapping letters drawn on a piece of cardboard and reading books about the Windows operating system. Rashmina didn't know what Facebook was, but apparently it was very important. Rashmina picked up a dry twig. "There is a party on the beach," she read aloud from her notebook. "Pawasha drives her mother to the party in her car." Someone groaned. Rashmina froze and looked around for the source of the sound. A few meters away, lying on his stomach among dried leaves and dirt, was an American soldier. His face was charged like a scorched pot, and there were dark, wet spots on his uniform. Blood. Rashmina realized. He must have been injured in the battle. The soldier groaned again and dragged himself forward. Where was he going? He twisted his head this way and that, as though he was looking for something. But there was only scrub trees as far as Rashmina could see. The soldier's head turned toward Rashmina, and she held her breath, but his eyes swept past her like he hadn't seen her. He lost his eyesight, Rashmina realized. The black marks on his face, he had been wounded and couldn't see. If someone didn't help him, he would die out here in these woods, or the Taliban would find him, and his death would be far more painful. Rashmina frowned. Why should she care? The Americans had killed her sister after all. Pashtunwali was the way of the Pashtun people, said that it was right and just to seek revenge against someone who had done you wrong. In Pashto, that revenge was called Badal, and it never ran out. Rashmina could wait a dozen years, 1,000, and still take her revenge on someone who wronged her. Why not just slip away then and let this man die? Rashmina flipped her notebook shut to leave, but she fumbled it. Her notebook hit the ground with a flump, and the soldier's head turned in her direction. Is someone there? He asked in English. Hello? I can't see and my ears are ringing. I'm hurt. Hello? Can you help me, please? Rashmina silently cursed her clumsiness. If she had been able to slip away without him hearing, she could have left the soldier to die and had been done with it. But now he had heard her, and specifically asked her for help. Just as Pashtawali gave her the right to revenge, it also said that when a person asked for help or protection, no Pashtun could refuse, no matter who was asking, friend or foe. That was Nanawetai, what the Americans would call refuge. Rashmina sagged. She could still slip away and have her revenge, but now it would mean denying aid to someone who asked for it. Hello? The American soldier asked again. His voice was weak. Please, he begged. Whoever you are, will you help me?